Kalen traced the delicate filaments of the nebula's core, his fingers brushing against the holographic projection that shimmered in the dim light of his study. The orphaned alien child, Zephyr, sat cross-legged on the floor, her multifaceted eyes reflecting the swirling gases. She was small, no taller than his knee, with skin like polished obsidian and limbs that seemed to bend in impossible ways. Her species, the Silken, were rumored to be extinct, wiped out by a rival race of living metal that devoured worlds for raw materials. Kalen had found her drifting in an escape pod, the sole survivor of her colony. He hadn't hesitated. "Do you remember them?" Kalen asked softly, his voice low in the quiet room. Zephyr tilted her head, her crystalline hair catching the light. She didn't speak in words, but in a series of melodic chimes that only Kalen could decipher. They were warm, she chimed, her tone bittersweet, like the nebula before the cold came. Kalen sighed, rubbing the back of his neck. The Silken were gentle, artistic, their civilization built on harmony and light. The metal creatures, the Ferrum, were the opposite, relentless, adaptive, and terrifyingly efficient. Kalen had seen their handiwork firsthand, planets stripped bare, molten cores siphoned off for fuel. They were the reason humanity had started building the Dyson sphere in the first place, a weekend project that had spiraled into a generations-long endeavor. A shield, a fortress, a monument to human stubbornness. Zephyr crawled into his lap, her cool skin a stark contrast to his own. "We'll protect you," she chimed, her voice a promise. Kalen smiled, though it didn't reach his eyes. The Ferrum were coming. They always did. The Dyson sphere was a marvel of human ingenuity, a layered construct of solar panels, habitats, and defense grids, all woven around a star like a cocoon. For most, it was a hobby, a way to pass the time while the universe ticked on. For Kalen, it was a lifeline. He stood on the outer hull, the star's warmth seeping through his suit as he welded a new panel into place. Below him, the nebula pulsed with an eerie, silent energy, hiding gravitational anomalies that could tear a ship apart in seconds. "Another one done," he muttered, wiping sweat from his brow. The comm crackled to life. "Kalen, you're needed in the core," said Lena, his second in command, her voice tight. "The Silken child is agitated." Kalen's blood ran cold. Zephyr had been quiet for days, her chimes muted, her movements sluggish. He'd thought it was grief, but now he wasn't so sure. He clambered back inside the sphere, the air thick with the scent of ozone and metal. In the medical bay, Zephyr lay on a cot, her obsidian skin cracked, revealing faint, golden light beneath. Lena hovered over her, her expression grim. "It's spreading," Lena said, gesturing to the cracks. "We've never seen anything like it." Kalen knelt beside Zephyr, his heart pounding. "What's happening?" Zephyr's eyes fluttered open, and her chimes came out in a frantic, discordant melody. "The cold is coming," she chimed, her voice laced with fear. "The Ferrum are here." The alarm blared, a harsh, mechanical scream that echoed through the Dyson sphere. Kalen sprinted through the corridors, his boots pounding against the metal floor. Outside, the star's light flickered as something massive eclipsed it. A Ferrum dreadnought, its surface shifting and reforming like liquid steel, loomed over the sphere. It wasn't attacking yet. It was observing. "They're analyzing us," Lena said, her voice strained as she joined him on the observation deck. "They're looking for weaknesses." Kalen's mind raced. The Ferrum were patient, but they were also relentless. If they found a way in, the sphere would fall. "Zephyr said they were coming," he muttered. "She knew." Lena nodded. The Silken could sense the Ferrum's presence. "It's how they survived so long." She paused. "But now Zephyr's one of us. We need to use that." Kalen's gaze fell on the holographic map of the sphere. It was a weekend project, but it was also a fortress. "We improvise," he said, a grim determination settling in his bones. The Ferrum dreadnought moved with terrifying precision, its metallic surface rippling as it extended tendrils toward the Dyson sphere. They weren't weapons, at least, not yet. They were probes, testing the defenses, searching for a way in. Kalen watched from the command center, his knuckles white as he gripped the railing. "They're going to breach the outer layer in 12 hours, Lena reported, her fingers flying across the console. "Our lasers can't penetrate their armor." Kalen's mind raced. The sphere was designed to withstand stellar flares, not a living metal horde. "We need a new plan," he said. "Something they don't expect." Zephyr stood beside him, her obsidian skin now glowing faintly. The golden cracks had spread, but they pulsed with a rhythmic light, almost like a heartbeat. "They fear the light," she chimed, her voice clearer than before. Kalen's eyes widened. The Farum were drawn to darkness, to cold, to raw materials. Light, pure, unfiltered starlight, was the last thing they wanted. "Lena," he said, turning to her, "I want you to reroute all power to the outer hull. Every panel, every emitter. I want this sphere to shine like a beacon." Lena stared at him. "You want to blind them?" "No," Kalen said, a smirk playing on his lips. "We want to scare them." The order was given, and the Dyson sphere erupted in light. Every panel, every emitter, every reflective surface glowed with the full intensity of the star within. The Farum dreadnought recoiled, its metallic surface twisting in agitation. The probes retracted, and the ship drifted back, as if burned by the brilliance. "It's working," Lena breathed, her eyes wide with disbelief. Kalen watched, his heart pounding. The Farum were adaptive, but they weren't prepared for this. They were creatures of shadow and steel, and here humanity was bathing them in light. It was absurd. It was perfect. But the Farum weren't finished. The dreadnought shuddered, and its surface began to shift, reforming into a new shape, something sleeker, more aggressive. "A spear." "They're adapting," Kalen muttered. "We need to hit them harder." Zephyr chimed softly beside him. "Asterisk, the light is not enough. They must fear the ritual, asterisk." Kalen frowned. "Ritual? What ritual?" The Farum spear ship sliced through the light, its tip glowing with concentrated energy. It was a weapon designed to pierce the sphere's defenses, to carve a path straight to the core. Kalen gritted his teeth. The light had slowed them, but it hadn't stopped them. "We need a ritual," Lena said, her voice tight. Zephyr mentioned it. "What does it mean?" Kalen looked at Zephyr, her obsidian skin now pulsing with a golden rhythm. The Silken were a ritualistic people, their culture built on ceremonies and traditions that bound them to the universe. "They believe in the power of collective intent," Kalen said, a thought forming. "If enough people focus on one thing, it can shape reality." Lena stared at him. "You want us to pray?" Kalen shook his head. "Not pray. Focus. Every human on this sphere, every mind, every thought, directed at one thing, fear." The idea was insane, but it was the only one they had. The Farum were creatures of logic, of cold, hard science. They didn't understand fear. They were fear. To turn it against them, it was a long shot. But it was their only shot. The order was broadcast across the Dyson sphere. "Focus. Fear. Now." Thousands of humans stopped what they were doing, their minds turning toward the approaching spear ship. They thought of loss, of terror, of the cold, metallic jaws of the Farum closing in. It was a collective scream, silent but deafening. Zephyr stood at Kalen's side, her chimes rising in a crescendo, a melody that amplified the fear of everyone around her. The golden cracks in her skin flared, and a wave of pure terror radiated from her, washing over the command center. Lena gasped, clutching her chest. "What is that?" "Zephyr's amplifying it," Kalen said, his own heart pounding. The Farum spear ship shuddered, its surface rippling as if in pain. For the first time, it wasn't advancing, it was retreating. "It's working," Lena whispered, tears streaming down her face. "They're afraid." Kalen watched, a grim satisfaction settling in his gut. The Farum were creatures of metal, but they were still alive. And fear was a language they understood all too well. The Farum dreadnought broke apart, its metallic surface fracturing under the weight of collective fear. The spear ship dissolved into dust, and the remaining ships retreated into the nebula, their forms flickering like dying stars. The Dyson sphere was safe, for now. Kalen slumped into his chair, exhaustion washing over him. Lena leaned against the console, her breathing ragged. Zephyr stood beside him, her golden light dimming as the fear subsided. "They're gone," Lena said, her voice barely a whisper. Kalen nodded, but his eyes were fixed on Zephyr. The golden cracks in her skin were fading, but they weren't gone. Something had changed. "What did you do?" he asked softly. Zephyr tilted her head, her chimes soft and melodic. "Asterisk, I shared the fear." It was the only way. Asterisk. Kalen's blood ran cold. The Silken were gentle, but they were also ancient. Their rituals weren't just traditions, they were tools. Weapons. And Zephyr had just used one of the most powerful they had.